Thank you for joining me, Diana Master, on NMH at 1, where we highlight the news making waves in Namibia and beyond, ranging from current affairs, community stories, sports and economic news. Now coming up in this broadcast, LPM leader critiques President Geingob over genocide comment. The Irongo region hosts outreach workshop on green hydrogen scholarship. Proper roads needed in order to fight crime, states police inspector. Stick around, we'll be right back with the midday news update.
Stock up and save with the best deals at WB. Get 1 litre Vita Creamy for $11.99, 2 litre Nam Milk Omaere for $44.99, 200 gram Top Class Spice Mix for $11.99, 10 kg Hotchfelt Maize for $84.99, plus 2 kg Surf Washing Powder for just $52.99. See more WB specials online at www.vurmanbrock.com. We care.
In our midday news update, Landless People Movement leader Bernardo Swartboy has condemned President Hage Geingob over comments he made recently that the apartheid was a far bigger tragedy than the 1904 to 1908 Nama over Herero genocide, saying it is an insult.
Opposing colonialism and with their superior weapons and poison, which was not superior, poison of the Herero in the Omega Desert, they obliterated about 120,000 people for Geingob because he was in the fight against apartheid. He feels, and that is a degree of arrogance unheard of, he thinks that the little fight he was involved in, because he was involved in, is so superior from a philosophical and human rights and historic point of view that he has the audacity to say, no, that one was small, just 120,000 people dead, no big problem. Here, this one was bigger. Precisely of what? If they even tell us today that there were 10,000 plane fighters that died, I will say, where are the graves? So you want to compare death versus death, and whose death is more valuable than someone else. But when a head of state takes you down that route, he's basically telling those idiots that are victims of the genocide, who are still in Swapo, people like Kaire Mbwende that are proposing around how Netumbo must be president, people like Bob Kandetu, he's showing them the middle finger and saying, I, as president of Swapo and as president of the country, think nothing of your struggle. In fact, I think your struggle was such a small thing that we had to take the bigger chunk of the responsibility to free you. Because what you did was nothing. The death was nothing.
Visual News highlights local stories from across Namibia right after the break. Stay with NMH at 1.
Hello and welcome to today's Sports Rep Show.
I am your host, Jesse Jackson Kauraifa. In replay, Namibia, who had won the toss for the first time on this tour.
Good day everyone, time for international sports news, starting off with tennis news, both on the WTA for women's and
Getting into this afternoon's visual news, the Irongo Regional Government hosted an outreach workshop on the Green Hydrogen Scholarship. The workshop took place at the Mondesa Multipurpose Centre in Swakopmund today. The scholarship has been designed to mainly target graduates and those interested in advancing in vocational education and training in the field of green hydrogen. The Governor was represented by Michael Jimmy. Let's have a look.
One for each student scholarship program is intended to facilitate capacity building for the emerging green hydrogen industry, to avail more opportunities for employment of youth in the country. Now, we have about 3-4 projects in the Irongo region. that will be piloted soon. One is already started, the Taurus green hydrogen project. There is so much potential for young people to be employed in the project, but we don't have the skills yet. So this is an opportunity for all of you to really get into these programs so that you can be upskilled and exploit the opportunities that these green hydrogen projects will be offering in the region. No matter where you come from, if you can go and stay in the mountains, beautiful mountain spaces near Uis, where the projects will be undertaken, or where Clean Energy will have their project near office. It will be beneficial for you in the long run. Through this program, 93 Namibian youth were awarded scholarships to pursue careers related to green hydrogen in November 22. Last year, there was a poll, and I'm sure many of you were not ready yet, and already 93 Namibian youth were recipients of these scholarships. Now don't
In our next video, Rundu Police Inspector Jeffrey Mashangu speaks about the importance of proper roads in order to deal with crime. Mashangu was speaking at a recent stakeholders meeting in Rundu on how bad roads are affecting them.
As much as we like to have roads, we talk of roads can bring development, number one, and it is important for policing in our department because we need to reach where it's not easy to reach. So if you got roads, there you can reach anywhere with any car because it's accessible. So I think the committee, the honorable committee got clear mind that we do not have roads and we need roads for us to do our job as the police and for the community to be able to access anything they are able to.
Stick around, Namibian Sun leads us into the newspaper review segment on the other side of this short commercial break.
We are so excited to be kickstarting your morning with the entertainment.
Everything was happening during this past weekend.
Yes.
Exciting news.
Wow, no, she was killing it already.
In my opinion, I don't see anything wrong with him serving the full term.
As well as keeping you informed on the issues that you need to know happening in and around our country.
Thank you for staying with NMH at 1. Let's take a look at what the lead stories are in Namibia's daily newspapers. Starting us off on the front page of the Namibian Sun, President Hage Geingob said the apartheid regime of South Africa, which SWAPO fought against, was worse than the genocide committed by Germany against the Nama and Ovaherero ethnic groups. He made the remarks at the Paris Institute of Political Studies, also known as Sciences Po, late last week. Between 1904 and 1908, German military forces committed genocide against Namibia's indigenous populations to gain control over the land. It is estimated that 80% of the Ovaherero people and 50% of the Nama people perished during the 4-year genocide. Local business owner Philadelphia Oliphant 39 says when the city of Windhoek cut her water and electricity close to 4 months ago, her life took a turn for the worse. Oliphant, who owned a fast food takeaway in Katutura, said she has since been forced to take alternative measures to provide for her family. I had to pawn some of my equipment just to be able to feed my family because I am the breadwinner. I also employed 2 women through my business and had to let them go, she told Namibian Sun during a visit to her now closed down business. Oliphant narrated that in December 2022, she realized that her neighbors were using her water after having bypassed it. According to her, she didn't notice until her bill kept increasing. Moving over to the front page of the Republican, German archaeologists received help from the Sandspoortsneers of Tsumkwe from the Nyanyai Conservation Area to make a breakthrough in the study of Namibian rock engravings in the Doro Navas Mountains. Thanks to the indigenous knowledge, researchers were able to identify the animal species, sex, age, and left or right leg in more than 90% of the rock art that was analyzed. Locally, the engravings of especially animal tracks were found, made by people who lived as hunters and gatherers in the later Stone Age. This is the first time researchers have used the knowledge of indigenous trackers to study rock art. Onto the papers, page 3, the court battle over the removal of the veterinary cordon fence, also known as the Red Line alone, will cost an estimated 3.56 million Namibian dollars in legal costs, which is 54 months of net compensation for him, says Job Amupanda. According to the affirmative repositioning activist, his disposable income is only 11,689 Namibian dollars per month. He would receive his maximum monthly income of 65,000 Namibian dollars. Amupanda said this in a secondary affidavit for his application for protective costs order and the ongoing lawsuit in which he requested a court order to have the VCF removed and declared illegal and unconstitutional. Moving over to Allgemeine Zeitung's front page, during a visit to the area east of the road leading from Katima Mulilo to the border crossing at the Ngoma Bridge, heading east towards the Nakabolelwa settlement and further to Impalila Island in the Zambezi region, a Namibia Media Holdings team came across a breeding area of the southern carmine bee eater in the Kabulabula Conservancy. There it was discovered that unknown individuals had strategically covered the breeding area with nylon nets in which the birds became entangled when leaving or flying to their nests, which are dug into the clay soil. The debate about the controversial cordon veterinary fence at the so-called Red Line shows no sign of going away. Since the end of May last year, legal proceedings to remove the fence initiated by the previous mayor of Windhoek, Job Amupanda, have been ongoing. He named Agriculture Minister Karl Schlettwein, the government, Attorney General Festus Mandeka, and Veterinary Services Directorate official Hango Nambinga as respondents in the matter. The Meat Board of Namibia is now also a defendant. The trial was postponed to September 26th last week. Stick around, we get into the second half of our newspaper review segment after this break.
Welcome to What's Cooking, where culinary passion meets expert insights.
Somebody must really want to cook and want to cook good food.
Immerse yourself in the bustling world of professional kitchens as top chefs create mouth-watering dishes. Join us for in-depth interviews as our host explores the experiences and expertise of our guest chefs. Don't miss out. Tune in to What's Cooking on NTV every Friday at 2100 hours and let the culinary adventure begin.
Continuing right along with our newspaper review segment, on the Namibian front page, the High Court has stopped the awarding of a pharmaceutical supply tender to Coast Farm Investment Privately Limited, a company of which the majority shareholder is a 5-year-old. The father of the miner, Sosmas Mukaratirwa, owns 49% of the company. Judge Boa Susiku, in his judgment, said the contract should be put on hold pending a review process. On page 3, workers' unions have lashed out at the government over the slow implementation of a national minimum wage. Acting Director of Labour, Industrial Relations and Employment Creation, Lydia Ndombo, yesterday confirmed the ministry is yet to implement a minimum wage for workers. On the front page of the New Era newspaper, in a landmark settlement last week, the Windhoek High Court ordered the removal of 8 warehouses at the Ramatex Industrial Complex in Ochongwise. It was further ordered that the land on which the buildings are located be rehabilitated and handed over to the city of Windhoek. The city now wants to use disputed land for industrial purposes. We are relieved to have access to this public land after 13 years. The industrial area's potential can now be unlocked. It's earmarked for industrial, not low-cost housing, a city spokesperson Harold Akwenye stated briefly. The Namibia Revenue Agency has called on travelers and traders to adhere to customs and excise rules at all times. NAMRA spokesperson Yarukekuro Ndorokade said it is important for the public to make a requisite declaration upon leaving and entering the country in order to comply with the customs and excise requirements. NAMRA issued a statement after the Gobabis Magistrates Court ordered the forfeiture of 2 vehicles after the drivers failed to declare them at borders. In the first incident, the accused persons allegedly drove through the Trans-Kalahari border border post without adhering to the mandatory customs declaration requirements by failing to engage customs officials on whether he was entering or leaving the country. Moving over to Market Watch, big fuel price hikes are expected in South Africa, which is Namibia's key import market. According to the Namibia Statistics Agency, the domestic import bill stood at 11.9 billion Namibian dollars in July. South Africa accounted for 37.8% of total imports. Imports from South Africa were mainly driven by motor vehicles for the transport of goods and motor cars for the transport of persons, which occupied the third and fifth positions respectively. Namibia also imports food items from South Africa. Now, Standard Bank says intra-country trade in 10 key African markets remains difficult. And after the break, we find out why as we get into our economic news.
Good evening and welcome to Sunset News.
Attachment stays on list A in the speech, rate and taxes, and how much.
After the break, we take a look at the sports.
We bring you
economic indicators, tomorrow's weather and sports. I am Aina Raiza Kweyong.
In economic news this afternoon, Standard Bank says intra-country trade in 10 key African markets remains difficult as currency volatility and international capital flight exacerbate the continent's historic shortage of foreign currency, particularly US dollars, which is needed to pay for imports. That's the key finding in the 2023 Standard Bank Africa Trade Barometer, with the depreciation of local currencies, rampant inflation, rising sovereign debt burdens, and higher global interest rates serving to lure international capital back to industrialized economies. The annual barometer is based on a survey of about 2,600 businesses, of which 68% are considered small in 10 countries, namely Angola, Ghana, Kenya, Mozambique, Namibia, Nigeria, South Africa, Tanzania, Uganda, and Zambia. The average score for the ease of trade across these 10 key markets remained at 43, below the neutral score of 50, showing that most businesses find trade with other African countries difficult. The reasons provided by most businesses surveyed cite poor infrastructure across the continent, as well as complex policies and onerous import and export duties as key contributors to the stifled trade on the continent. Now let's take a look at the economic indicators. The Namibian dollar trades at 23.36 to the British pound, 20.24 to the euro, 18.91 to the US dollar, and 2 Namibian dollars and 59 cents buys you 1 Chinese yuan. Most of these stock prices maintained on the stock exchange. SBN Holdings took an upturn of 0.40%, Trustco Group Holdings an upturn of 7.30%. Local index closed also took an upturn of 0.02%, while overall index closed took a downturn of 0.35%. Gold and platinum took an upturn of 0.01%, with gold trading at $1,931 and 76 cents per ounce. Copper, Brent crude oil took a dip of 0.80% and 0.91% respectively. Now, more than half of the girls between the ages of 15 and 19 in Mozambique's troubled Cabo Delgado province have already been pregnant, according to a study. We return with news from Africa right after this.
Welcome to My.NA Cars, your ultimate destination for everything automotive.
I am your host, Diana Master. Teamwork makes the dream work, right?
Discover the latest models, innovative technologies, and expert insights from our passionate hosts. Learn essential maintenance tips and get exclusive behind-the-scenes access to the automotive industry. Don't miss My.NA Cars on NTV every Thursday at 2100 hours. Tune in and ignite your passion for automobiles.
We now expand beyond Namibia's borders to give you the latest news from the African continent here on NMH at 1. More than half of the girls between the ages of 15 and 19 in Mozambique's troubled Cabo Delgado province have already been pregnant, according to a study by the National Statistics Institute. Rampant insecurity is a fact of life for people living in the region, rich in oil, gas and rubies, that has suffered under a 6-year jihadist insurgency. The violence has forced more than 1 million people from their homes, left 4,000 dead, and destroyed almost 200 schools. Pregnant girls had previously been barred from going to school, but Cabo Delgado's education director, Evaldo Quincadet, says this was later changed amid concerns over literacy levels. As many as 70% of women there cannot read nor write. He says the latest data is worrying and yet another indication of the enormous challenge facing the province. 4 in 10 girls in Mozambique, according to a government official, get married by the age of 18. Getting into our next story, the European Union executive has temporarily suspended funding for the World Food Programme in Somalia, 2 senior EU officials told Reuters on Monday after a UN investigation found widespread theft and misuse of aid meant to avert famine. The European Commission gave more than $7 million in aid to the WFP's operations in Somalia last year, a fraction of the donations of more than $1 billion it received, UN data shows. EU member states gave much more money on a bilateral basis. It was not immediately clear whether any would suspend aid, but Laszlo Vari, a spokesman for the European Commission, neither confirmed nor denied specifically a temporary suspension, but said, so far the EU has not been informed by its UN partners of a financial impact on EU-funded projects. Nevertheless, we will continue to monitor the situation and abide by our zero-tolerance approach to fraud, corruption or misconduct. One senior EU official said the decision was taken after the UN investigation concluded that landowners, local authorities, members of the security forces and humanitarian workers were all involved in stealing aid intended for vulnerable people. The official, who spoke on condition of anonymity, said the aid would be restored after the WFP met additional conditions such as vetting of partners on the ground in Somalia. Now we bring you international news.
eTicket, your online ticket solution for events and event marketing, bringing you ease of mind and making sure that your event gets out there. For more information, contact events@nmh.com.na.
In international news this afternoon, the United Nations has recorded over 1,600 incidents of rights violations against people detained by the Taliban authorities, nearly half of them acts of torture and ill treatment, mostly by police and intelligence agents, a report released on Wednesday showed. The UN mission to Afghanistan said 18 people had also died in prisons and in the custody of police and intelligence in the 19 months ending July 2023. The Taliban have staffed and controlled the police and the intelligence agency since they took over the country as foreign forces withdrew in 2021. In attempts to extract confessions or other information, detainees were subjected to severe pain and suffering through physical beatings, electric shocks, asphyxiation, stress positions, and forced ingestion of water, as well as blindfolding and threats. UNAMA said in a statement, other violations included not being informed of the reason for arrest, not being able to access a lawyer, and inadequate medical care in custody. Around 1 in 10 of the violations were against women. Journalists and civil society members accounted for nearly a quarter of the victims of the violations. In a response published with the report, the Taliban-led Ministry of Foreign Affairs said the number of reported violations was not accurate, especially the number of journalists or civil society advocates affected. Stick around after the break. We bring you local and international sports.
Neo Paints has established a 67-year Namibian legacy, creating personalized paint solutions that blend quality and innovation for the Namibian people. We pride ourselves in being a 100% Namibian-owned company, investing in our country and our people by employing and empowering true Namibians. With every brushstroke, Neo Paints commits to our quality guarantee and always delivering a coat of excellence. At Neo Paints, we always stay true to our country. We are as Namibian as you.
Heading straight into our local sports news, the biggest and most lucrative squash tournament yet to be staged in Namibia, BDO Namibian Open, gets underway at the Wanderers Squash Courts today. Derby County have completed the signing of Namibian international footballer Ryan Nyambe. The versatile defender joins Derby as a free agent after leaving Wigan Athletic last season. The 25-year-old Namibia international right-back has joined on a contract which will run until January 2024 with an option to renew. The brave Gladiators of Namibia will face Gambia tomorrow at 7 p.m. in the Women Africa Cup of Nations qualifier match. Stick around for international sports right after this. Manchester United manager Erik ten Hag is starting to feel the heat from frustrated fans of the Red Devils after a disastrous start to the season has left hopes of Premier League glory already looking forlorn. United have lost 3 of their opening 5 games and face a daunting task to open their Champions League campaign away to Bayern Munich today. Namibia's captain Johan Daisel says he cannot wait to lead his side into Thursday's Rugby World Cup pool match against France, a country where he spent half a decade of his life. Runaway Formula One Championship leader Max Verstappen will be determined to roar back at Sunday's Japanese Grand Prix after his record streak of 10 straight wins ended in Singapore. If you're just joining us, this is NMH at 1 and we'll get into the highlights from today's broadcast right after this. You're watching NMH at 1. If you're just joining us, here are the news highlights. More than half of girls between the ages of 15 and 19 in Mozambique's troubled Cabo Delgado province have already been pregnant, according to a study by the National Statistics Institute. The United Nations has recorded over 1,600 incidents of rights violations against people detained by the Taliban authorities, nearly half of them acts of torture by ill treatment, mostly by police and intelligence agents. In local sports, the biggest and most lucrative squash tournament yet to be staged in Namibia, BDO Namibian Open, gets underway at the Wanderers Squash Courts today. Those have been your highlights. Remember to tune in every weekday at 1 p.m. to spend your lunch hour with NMH at 1, catching up on the latest news in Namibia and beyond. From me, Diana Master, I wish you a lovely day ahead.